folks, Scott here with my 10 cards 1 kit video featuring the My Monthly Hero kit for August of 2019. This is our Royal Fairy Tale and Fantasy themed kit. So this is our 6 by 8 inch stamp set featuring all of our fairy tale characters. We've got knights, we've got princesses, we've got a jester, a king, and a queen. There's a magician, a unicorn, and a dragon, and all sorts of sayings, some banners. Some of these sayings will fit in those banners. This is my first fantasy fairy tale stamp set. Of course, I've got a unicorn or two in my stash, but these are very unique. I like these sentiments here. Have a magical day. Welcome to the Middle Ages. Happy day of thy birth. What a nice way of saying happy birthday. That looks like lots of fun. Of course, we get matching dies. These are our 17 coordinating frame cuts, and this is that fancy castle die right there in the center. Those look like lots of fun. That looks like a great die. Always love the fancy dies. And there's more goodies as well. We get 3 pots of glimmer ink. Glimmer metallic ink in gold, purple, and red. I think Hero Arts just came out with these this last year, and I'm really interested to play with these, see how they work. And we get some paper. We've got 2 half sheets, 8.5 by 5.5 of nice parchment paper, and 2 sheets. Ooh, look at that. Merry Matte Lava Purple paper. Can I dare use it? Very cool. Love that paper. So to finish us out here, we've got this nice full pack of dragon scale sequins. Look at those sparkle in there. Those are kind of shaped like little ellipses, like dragon scales, or dragon scale sequins. That is our kit this month. Let's see where the Middle Ages takes us this month. And here are my 10 cards from the My Monthly Hero August 2019 card kit. These are all white card bases. We've got a couple of black card bases here. Now, I actually used Versa Fine Onyx Black ink, my Bristol Smooth cardstock, and my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to color all of these stamps. These are really very small but very detailed stamps, and I find that the tiny brush nibs on my Zig markers works very well for coloring tiny images like these. I only have the 36 set. That seems to satisfy most of my coloring needs. Now, I didn't automatically stamp all of these images and color them and die cut them all out. I actually thought I'd be using these more as scene builders and stamping them directly to card fronts, so I didn't do that first thing. But I did, of course, notice these 2 banners that are empty and the sentiments that would fit inside of them. Now, all these small sentiments are what would fit inside those big banners there, but none of the big sentiments would fit inside those banners. Well, then I noticed this little vertical banner down here, and there's no real sentiments or patterns or anything to fill in this banner over here. So I thought maybe I could adapt this banner so it could hold one of the larger sentiment stamps. So on my first card on a white card base, we've got a big sentiment on 5 banners all stamped together. This is the happy day of thy birth. That's almost like a medieval billboard. Now, once I figured out how far apart these 2 poles should be, which I believe is 1 3/8 inches, I stamped the right pole by masking off the left side, then scooted the paper over 1 3/8 inches and stamped the second pole with the right side masked off. And then it was a simple matter of taking my Pigma Micron pen, this is the 01 pen, and connecting the cross poles with a ruler across the top. I then took that banner stamp and stamped it on a scrap of cardstock to use as a little stencil for drawing the rest of the V's at the bottom. It was easy to line that up with the top pole and then just trace the V at the bottom. Move that along, trace the V, move that along, trace the V. I got a nice big banner. I simply used my Pigment Micron pen to sketch in the rest of the ties across the top there. I did color that banner in with the gold glimmer metallic ink included in our kit. I really like that gold ink. Really, really shiny and sparkly. Stamped Happy Day of Thy Birth inside there with onyx black ink and embossed that with a little clear embossing powder. I added some of the little dragon scale sequins on the tips of our big banner there. I stamped our knight on his horse directly on this card front. Now, all of a sudden, I had two nice images on a card with no background. So I actually took my Zig markers, watered them down quite a lot, and then just painted in this soft background. We've got a little bit of a horizon line there, some really soft clouds in the background. I haven't ever tried that before, but the Zigs worked really well, gave us a nice subtle background, put us in a place, but didn't overshadow the focal images on this. I did add, of course, some little grass details and shadows under the horse with a direct marker placement on this card front. I did die cut this panel using one of my Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle dies, of course, and then matted that on some dark blue cardstock, glued that to a white card base. This is a one-layer wonder, a flat card. I thought I'd be doing this for all of my cards. Of course, Hero Arts included a really nice joke to go along with this fun birthday sentiment. Happy day of thy birth. Welcome to the Middle Ages. Perfect fun sentiment for anybody reaching those nebulous Middle Ages in our lives. Happy day of thy birth, our first knight in shining armor card. I was eager to tackle that dragon stamp. That's about the biggest stamp in this stamp set. So for my second card on a white card base, we've got our You Slay card with the dragon and the fancy castle die and our knight with his sword raised. I took a dark blue panel of cardstock and used some of my permanent white gouache paint to sprinkle some tiny stars in that, kind of make it a night sky. I punched a 1-inch circle out of some very light gray cardstock and die cut the castle die out of some medium gray cardstock. And then I used some of the Hero Arts reactive sea salt ink and did a little blending on the edges of the castle and that castle die cut. I glued both of those down to the blue panel. I then just freehand cut this little rocky outcropping down here for our foreground, and again use that sea salt ink and just a post-it note to add a little bit of dimension and texture to the front of those rocks. I also took that piece and flipped it over and used this side of it on this side to give a little bit of rock dimension behind our knight there. It seemed a little blank behind him over there, so a little more sea salt, a little more rock definition there. I stamped and embossed the You Slay sentiment with white embossing powder on our front panel. I glued that panel on at the bottom and used foam squares along the top edge to give it a little bit of dimension. Now, I loved coloring this dragon in red, but as I was coloring him, I was a little frustrated by the fact that he was smooth. So I took my Micron pen and I went ahead and added scales to this dragon. I thought that added a lot of texture, a lot of terror to this dragon. Certainly makes him seem more menacing. I did add some little texture on his belly as well. That 01 Micron pen matches the lines in these dies very, very nicely. I really love that dragon. I love this kind of monotone gray card with the pop of that red dragon pulling your eye right there. Of course, Hero Arts supplies us with another perfect complement to the sentiment, "You slay, thou beeth on fire." I actually took our parchment paper included in the kit, die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I stamped the sentiment at the top and then that little flame stamp below it and colored that with my Zig markers. Thou beeth on fire. This is a great congratulations card. You slay, thou beeth on fire. Congratulations for slaying the dragon. Now, after I posted my 10 cards, 1 kit video featuring the July My Monthly Hero kit, Libby Hickson at Hero Arts contacted me and asked me if I would like to give a try to their new Hero Hues ink pads. Well, of course I said yes. You don't have to ask me twice. So Libby sent me the whole batch of the new Hero Hues inks, and I promised her I would try working with them on this next card kit. So for card number 3, we've got "I Sendeth Thee Warmest Wishes" with a lineup of beautiful maidens coming out of a large tent. This was a fun card. I actually, again, took a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. Then I blended the sky and the grass. I used the Pool Party and the Blue Hawaii and the Green Apple Hero Hues inks to do all of my blending on this background here. Came out very nice. Those inks blend really sweetly. I used my mini ink blending tool, so I'm not using brushes. I'm using a foam ink blending tool. They blended very nicely, especially on this Bristol Smooth cardstock. I did take our little Maiden stamp here, and I stamped her 5 times in a row. I just masked the left side of her and got 5 of my Maidens all in a row. I did stamp that tent stamp 3 times. I trimmed off the left curtain on one, I trimmed off the right curtain on the other, I trimmed off all of the curtains on the third, glued their canopies together to make this great big tent, colored those all in violet, and used the gold glimmer ink for the trim on the canopy. That gave us a big enough tent to stick all of these ladies inside of. I did take that double banner and I stamped these 2 sentiments in that double banner. "I sendeth thee warmest wishes," and then I cut the flag away from the canopy on this tent and just stuck that banner behind there. So we've got 1 flag there. The other 2 flags were cut away. That banner flies really nicely from the center pole of that right canopy. I did take that purple lava cardstock and use that for the background inside the tent. A little thin strip of wood grain cardstock gives us a little platform for that tent to stand on. I added some little grass details on the edges. I glued the tents in the background and the girls and the banner directly flat to my background and added my knight with some foam squares over on the side here. I then cut a piece of that purple matte lava paper and cut that at 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I wanted to use that as a mat, but I certainly didn't want to waste all of that great purple paper behind this. So I took that same Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die that I cut the pattern from, and I cut the inside of that frame with that. So that gave us a very thin purple frame for this. Everything is glued to a white card base. I sendeth thee warmest wishes. Now, I'm not quite sure if these ladies are putting on a show, if they're displaying the latest fashions, or if they're simply being offered up to this young knight. But whichever it is, I can't think of anything much warmer. I sendeth thee warmest wishes. Those new Hero Hues inks blend beautifully, make for a very lovely background. Thank you, Libby, so much. Okay, so that covers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sentiments in our stamp set. You know, I really challenged myself to try and use every stamp in the stamp sets in these 10 card videos. So I think I'm ready for a bit of a pun now. On a white card base, we've got our little Jester. Don't read too much into this card. It's just a nice Jester. And yes, he's a really nice Jester. I love that little Jester stamp. I did take another piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. I cut that down with the next size smaller stitched rectangle frame. I colored that with a Marabou Kiwi art crayon. These are really nice. I colored that paper just using this crayon and a wet wipe to wipe that color all over the card. Came out perfect, a great color for the background on this card. I then reached for a Tim Holtz stencil. This is a layering stencil. This is the Shifter Diamonds layering stencil. I got this a number of months ago on sale somewhere. Haven't had a chance to use it. It was a perfect thing to use for this card. I love the fact that that shifter stencil gives us a nice background in 2 different colors. I did use the green apple Hero Hues, and I did use the grape slush Hero Hues through that stencil. I was careful not to stencil very much right here where I was going to put our Jester. That lightens up and kind of disappears there. Now I took that purple lava cardstock that was left over from this last card and die cut the center of that away using the same stitched rectangle die that cut the inner panel. So I've got these 2 pieces again that inlay perfectly with each other. I put those together and glued those to an orange mat, a thin orange mat. Now, why did I choose orange on this? Well, we've got the whole Roy G. Biv almost on this. We've got purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. So there's my rainbow colors on this card. I did create this sentiment on another scrap of Bristol Smooth cardstock that was colored with that kiwi crayon. I used my Silhouette software to create that. Don't read too much into this card. This is the Fraktur BT font. I will have links to these fonts on my website at CardCutups.com. This is the proper size here. I also did the inside of the card as the same font, and I used my Lawn Fawn Everyday Messages die to cut this sentiment for the front of the card. The Jester and the sentiment are both mounted with foam tape. Everything's glued to a white card base. Don't read too much into this card. It's just a nice Jester. A great little pun using that fun little Jester stamp. Now, I did color the King and Queen stamps together. I actually thought I was going to be putting them inside the tent, but then decided that the Maidens were a much better fit. So I was going to use the King and Queen together, but then realized that we have individual sentiments for both the King and the Queen. So in order to try and use up all of these sentiments, I'm going to split our 2 seats of power apart and create 2 different cards with them. On the white card base, we've got your Queen of the Castle. With that great castle die in the background. I took my next size smaller Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die and cut out a piece of that Bristol Smooth cardstock. I did some ink blending on that using the Hero Hues inks. I used the Fruit Punch, I used the Creamsicle, and I used the Lemon Drop inks to blend this background, a really nice sunset or sunrise background behind that castle there. Those inks blend beautifully and the colors are so bright and vibrant. I then took a piece of watercolor paper and I did a dry embossing of that castle die. I then used my zig markers to scribble in a little color here and there, and then sprayed it down with water and let the water move those inks around. Once that was dry, I did a complete die cut on that castle, cutting the bottom of that with that same stitched rectangle die. I glued those two pieces together with a little bit of foam squares behind the castle. So there's a little bit of dimension just at the castle, but all the way around the edges, these are glued flat. Now again, I took that leftover piece of the purple lava cardstock and I cut the inside of that away using the same stitched rectangle die I used for the panel. And I cut a second frame. I knew I had 2 layers of cardstock at the bottom here, so I cut another white frame and glued those 2 together so that those would be nice and even on the bottom. Now I did trim the my away from the your my and stamped just the your, queen of the castle. Your queen of the castle. You don't have to be my queen of the castle. Your queen of the castle, and you rule my heart. Nice non-traditional Valentine here for the queen in your life. I created the My Heart sentiment using my Silhouette software and the Lucida black letter font. That seemed to match very well. It goes quite well with that you rule sentiment from the stamp set. Those are stamped, of course, on that parchment paper, die cut with a stitched rectangle die glued to the inside of the card. Your queen of the castle, you rule my heart. The queen is then, of course, die cut and attached to the front of the card with some foam squares. That's more of that purple lava paper frame. I'm being ultra conservative with my use of that great purple mirror cardstock. Queen of the Castle. So that's our queen card. Let's go to our king card on a black card base. We've got king for a day. Look at that purple lava cardstock as our sky. A very masculine card here. I took that last piece of that purple lava cardstock that was left over from cutting out the frame here and matted that on a thin white mat. I die cut that castle from a piece of black cardstock and glued that on top, embossed the king for a day with white embossing powder, added my die cut king with some foam squares. Very sharp, very masculine. I love that purple cardstock in the sky. I did add, of course, more parchment paper on the inside for a writing surface and added the happy day of thy birth stamp here. This is another great birthday card. Of course, you could change up that inside sentiment to read a Happy Father's Day. King for a day, Happy Father's Day would be a perfectly appropriate sentiment for this card. Very masculine, very sharp, very shiny. King for a day. Now, one of my favorite stamps in this stamp set was this unicorn stamp. I just loved how stylized he was and the pose that he was in, a great action pose. I colored him up and die cut him out. And since I colored him with rainbows, I decided we needed to continue that rainbow theme for this card. So on a white card base, we've got Believe in Yourself, featuring that fun rainbow unicorn. Now, I dug out this old stencil. I don't know where I got this stencil. I have no idea where this came from, but I love this little zigzag going down the center. So I used my Deco Foil transfer gel on some black cardstock and then the Deco Foil shattered rainbow foil to do that center panel. That shattered glass rainbow foil is really pretty. The gradation between the colors is so nice. It worked so well for this card. I took my center foiled panel, added 2/4-inch pieces of that purple lava cardstock to the two sides, glued those down to a thin white cardstock mat, glued all those down to a thicker black cardstock mat, and glued those all down to my white card base here. I created that sentiment using my Silhouette software and the Fracture BT font. I printed this out on some cardstock, and I die cut that sentiment using my Lawn Fawn Everyday Sentiment die. I added the sentiment and the lovely unicorn to the front of this card using foam squares. Believe in yourself, a beautiful, shiny, reflective encouragement card. I think that foiling goes really well with that purple lava cardstock. It all works very nicely together. One of my faves here, believe in yourself, a gorgeous unicorn stamp. Now, I also really liked that little female archer stamp down here because she has some action. She's actually in the process of shooting an arrow. For my next card on a white card base, we've got Practice Makes Princess. And you got this on the inside. Looks like she needs a little more practice to me. Now, I actually considered stamping this all on one layer and using masking, but she got a little busy over here behind this banner, so I decided to die cut her and the arrows and the target. So on a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock cut with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, I did use the Pool Party and the Green Apple Hero Hues and my cheapo blender brushes to do this really light, soft, ethereal background. I didn't want to get too detailed with the background. I wanted this image to really play the most, so I literally just did the edges, a little blue sky across the cardstock. I was interested to see how light I could get those Hero Hues inks to go. Really nice, very soft, especially with blender brushes. I stamped that vertical banner 5 times across the middle of this card and then paper pieced it. I found this little cartoon of one of the unicorn tapestries online. I printed that up 5 times and stamped and die cut the banner out of those and just glued those. Nice paper piecing. That banner is great to use for paper piecing. Any pattern paper you have that might work. Perfect for paper piecing. It really makes those banners stand out. A little gold ink for the finials on the top. The girl and the arrows and the target, of course, are mounted with foam squares. A little extra zig markers for the grass and shadows underneath our images here. Practice makes princess, if you look closely. Her arrow that goes into the banner there has actually pierced the heart of that unicorn. So maybe she's a better shot than we thought. Practice makes princess. You got this. Another great encouragement card featuring that fun female archer in our stamp set. Now, I have to admit that the royal greeting sentiment felt a little stuck up to me. And the I thank thee sentiment, though I understand it's a thank you sentiment, it felt more like a prayer or possibly a hymn to me. So I thought maybe if we paired those up, we could alleviate what I felt was a little awkwardness there. I'm not going to send anybody a card that says royal greetings, implying that I'm a king and a queen. No, no, no. So I thought, let's put them together on another black card base. We've got a pair of knights in shining armor with their banners, royal greetings, I thank thee, and on the inside, just wanted to say. Fun little pun here for our thank you card. I, of course, reverse stamped this knight and this banner. I show my reverse stamping technique in the June My Monthly Hero 10 card video, if you're interested in that. It came out really very nicely, colored those both up, die cut everything out. Now, when you're die cutting a reverse image, put it up to a window or a light board or anything, and and align the die on the back of the image, which will cut right through into the proper space. I glued the banners to their poles, and those were our two focal images. Now, I dug through my image stash and I found this great pattern that's kind of medieval. It's kind of a quatrefoil pattern. I had this in my stash. I tried it in black. I tried it in a soft orange. I ended up printing it up in a full color orange for the back panel here. I just trimmed that out, added a little creamsicle Hero Hues ink to the side for a little distress edges. I took some of that purple lava cardstock, cut it to 1/8 inch thick for the top and bottom of that. I also added a strip of that to the front edge of this card. I mounted our knights with foam squares and their banners, and then for a final touch I added a lilac mirror bubble peel off from Love from Lizzie. That matched perfectly, matched up with that purple lava cardstock, finished out this card nicely. Just Wanted to Say, of course, is printed in the Lucida black letter font. I printed that on the last piece of parchment paper. When we got that parchment paper, I wasn't sure what to do with it, but then realized that it's a perfect writing surface for the inside of a colored card base. Royal greetings, I thank thee. Joust wanted to say thank you. So I only have the wizard and the have a magical day sentiment left. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with those the moment I saw them. For our last card on a white card base, we've got a nice little interactive card featuring the wizard. Have a magical day. Bling! And his little wand lights right up. I love that. As the Harry Potter gang would say, Luminos. Bing! Have a magical day. I finished that off on the inside with a happy day of thy birth as well. This is another birthday card. Have a magical day. I stamped the wizard on this small panel of Bristol Smooth cardstock, colored him up. I punched a tiny hole at the edge of his magic wand, and then created this thin black mat for behind there. I put the two pieces together, marked where that tiny hole was, and then on the black cardstock mat, I punched a 1/4 inch hole behind that. So if you look closely, it's not just the single hole, but it lights up around there just a little bit. That's that extra opening in the black cardstock behind there. I did add a little of my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen around the wizard. I stamped and embossed this sentiment using the Simon Says Stamp Ultrafine Steel Navy embossing powder. I really like that embossing powder. Really smooth, really shiny, went very well with this card. I again went back to my stash and dug around in my stash. This is an old Shutterstock image that I got a long time ago. I don't think I've ever really used it, but it was the perfect background for this card. I trimmed it with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, added that to a thin black card mat. I did all of the chibi light wiring right on top of that pattern paper with the battery down here on the left. I stamped the push from my Favorite Things interactive labels stamp set. I stamped that using the My Monthly Hero blue reactive ink that we got in our June of last year, June of 18 kit, I believe. I stamped that using that blue reactive. I also stamped the inside sentiment using that blue reactive. All the blues go very well together. Have a magical day. Bling! Another fun interactive light up card. I did, of course, add a little clear gem over the hole to kind of disperse and spread that light out a little bit more. I really like this card, and though it's a really small stamp, I think it's a really great wizard stamp. Now, whether this wizard is Merlin or Albus Dumbledore or Gandalf, The blue? I love having a wizard stamp in my stash. That's my 10 cards using the My Monthly Hero August 2019 kit. I did manage to use every stamp in this set. If you will forgive me not using the My on this sentiment. I did use most of the dies. I didn't think I would. I do have to give a big shout out to Judy Nothus, who sent me this great tabletop die holder. This was such a nice surprise. It holds all of my dies on any kit I'm working on. It's also magnetic on the back, so I have all of my stitched rectangle dies and my banner dies on the back for easy access. Thank you so much, Judy. This is a lifesaver. I did manage to use a few of the sequins. I managed to use a little bit of all of our inks, and I think I'm proudest to say that I still have a whole sheet of that purple lava cardstock and then some, a couple more pieces, which I think is really great considering that we've got 6 cards with that purple lava cardstock featured on it. You can stretch your supplies. Now this kit is still available at heroarts.com. If I've managed to spark your imagination or maybe pique your interest, please use my links in the description down below. We've got a wide variety of cards with these 10 cards. We've got a few birthday cards, a congratulations card, a few encouragement cards, a number of puns. Really fun. Oh, thank you so much for joining me today, folks. I hope you enjoy these cards. I had much more fun with this kit than I initially thought I would. Some of these stamps, I'm sure, will get a lot of use over the years to come. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. If you have any comments, please don't hesitate to say something. Let me know which card is your favorite. And as always, please like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't open unsolicited chainmail. And as always, happy crafting. If you'd like more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at CardCutups.com.